Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled Parent Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My new Karen neighbor is demanding I cut down the plants in my yard. After that, am I the jerk for making my chronically late friend miss her seminar? And after that, you want me to coerce an inspector after someone else did the work? Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to force anyone to cut down plants in their yard. How about I spray it with some Roundup then, Reddit boy? So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My new Karen neighbor is demanding I cut down plants in my yard. A family that has kids recently moved into the house next door. The border between our yards, mostly on my side, has a ton of poison ivy. I'm extremely sensitive to it, so I haven't tried to control it except when it starts to grow too much into my yard. Even when I do remove it, I have to suit up and wash everything thoroughly, and I still somehow end up with a rash. One of the parents came to my door last week to ask me to remove the poison ivy because their kids have been getting rashes when they play in that part of the yard. I said that I couldn't do that because of my sensitivity, but that they could just get it removed on their side, and as long as their kids stayed in their own yard, it wouldn't be an issue. They said that even if they did that, it would grow back into their yard from my side, and that I could pay a company to remove it if I wouldn't do it myself. I said that I would only agree to it if they paid for all of it. They refused and said that they would be looking into local laws about nuisance plants. We're not on speaking terms anymore. Am I really the jerk here? It's their problem, so why should I have to pay for it? They could just teach their kids to avoid poison ivy like I do. I could understand if I had planted it intentionally, but poison ivy is a native plant that was here before I was, and it's an important food source for bees and birds. Quite frankly, I'm grateful for it because it's been keeping their loud kids away from my yard who were really annoying me whenever I was out in my garden. It sounds like the poison ivy border between your properties is a nuisance to both you and your neighbors, and you are all making the situation needlessly complicated. Why not just hire a company to remove the plant and then split the cost? Edit. Oh, I see that the real reason you're letting this poisonous plant continue to grow and encroach on your neighbor's property is so that their kids will not be able to play in that section of their own yard. You are intentionally keeping a poisonous plant around that's harmful to both you and your neighbors so that they can't access that part of their property. How completely selfish. You're the jerk. Info. Why aren't you two just paying half each? It's clearly a nuisance to both of you. I'm a little bothered on OP's behalf that the parent's response was to put the financial responsibility on OP. The verbiage used in the post, at least, comes across that the parent has deemed OP responsible for the removal, whether it's professional or not. If OP doesn't care about it and appreciates it as both a contributor to the ecosystem and as a natural fence line, then it seems more reasonable for the parents to remove it on their side and put up either a competing bush or a hedge plant, or put in garden edging of some kind, or even a proper fence. A lot of people are crying, think of the kids, but that's really a point of education. Don't play near potentially harmful areas. There isn't going to be an easy answer to everything in life, nor is everyone going to be willing to compromise. Additionally, if a kid is allergic to pollen or a particular tree, there's no exception that the neighborhood has to accommodate that. Trees are not poison ivy, but it's a loose connection given plants are the primary topic. As far as looking into nuisance laws for plants, my unprofessional assumption is that if OP isn't cultivating the plant and it's not an invasive species, it probably won't hold much weight as an argument. Then again, tree law is nuts, so I could be very incorrect there. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the neighbor? Please let us know. Roundup makes a special product just for poison ivy. It works like a charm. Spray the whole area and it'll be gone in a week. Am I the jerk for making my chronically late friend miss her seminar? My friend, 25 female, is constantly late for everything. Be it work-related or fun activities, she will always be at least 15 to 20 minutes late. She doesn't have a car, and so oftentimes I, 25 male, will have to pick her up from her house. I work at a university, and she's a PhD student there, and her place is along the way from me. Last time I offered her a ride to work, she ended up being 20 minutes late after I've already arrived at her place. Because of that, I ended up being late for work. She's always very apologetic about her lateness, but never changes. This week, she was supposed to give a seminar at the university, which is a crucial part of her PhD program. She asked me if I could give her a ride to work that day. I told her sure, but that I was picking her up at 8 a.m. and she must be there at exactly 8 a.m. and not a minute later. She chuckled, but I told her I wasn't joking, and she promised that she would be there. The morning of her seminar, I drove to her place and I got there at 7:55 and texted her that I was here, and she told me that she would be out in just a minute. At 8 o'clock, there was no indication that she would come out, and she didn't text anything. So at 8:01, I drove off. At around 8:20, she called me asking where I was. I told her I was at work and that I wasn't joking when I told her that she had to be ready right that minute. She started screaming and crying over the phone and told me that she was having a hard time that morning, couldn't be ready right at 8 a.m. She then begged me to come back to pick her up, as her seminar is at 9 a.m. and she needed to be at the school before then. I could have done it quick enough to pick her up and drop her off without affecting my work, but I decided I didn't want to do that, and I told her that I wouldn't. She was crying and hyperventilating at that point and said she had promised to never be late for anything else again, and re-emphasized that this seminar was crucial for her PhD and that she absolutely cannot miss it without severe consequence. I responded, "Oh well," and hung up. I then went about my day at work normally. I feel like I could have went back and picked her up in this scenario since it wouldn't have been detrimental to me, and at the same time, this was something very important for her. On the other hand, I feel like this should be a wake-up call for her chronic lateness. Not the jerk. You warned her. She also had 40 minutes to make other arrangements, even after all her procrastination. Could you have been kinder? Yes. Could you have reminded her about your time restrictions? Yes. Could you have given her a final notice with an "I'm going to drive away at 8 o'clock"? Yes. Is it rude to be continually late? Yes. Is she an adult? Yes. Is it your problem to manage her time? No. Still not the jerk. When you said you left at 8:01, I was thinking you were the jerk. But when she didn't call you until 8:20, I laughed and thought, oh no, definitely not the jerk. Your friend needs to learn that punctuality in the professional world is important. Also, her chronic lateness should not be affecting you getting to work on time. Not the jerk. I had a friend like this. I was left at the movies, restaurants, train stations. She was never ever on time, always apologetic, etc. Finally, I just started leaving after 15 minutes, which even that seemed a long time when you're waiting at a restaurant. I was also told after I left the first time, I'll never be late again, I promise. But she was. And then the friendship faded away, which was okay by me. My stomach was always in knots, and I was always frustrated and angry by the time she showed up that I finally realized I wasn't enjoying myself. Clearly, your friend showed up at 8:20 and expected you to idly wait for her like her chauffeur. It's so disrespectful of your time. Frankly, I'd be okay with not having this friend. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their friend? Please let us know. I don't mind at all when people show up late. It shows me that our time together is not important to them and I don't need to keep them in my life. You want me to coerce an inspector after someone else did the work? This happened years ago. I had just started working as an independent electrician, and one day I received a call from a new customer. He was one of those people that flips homes in lower income neighborhoods. I'll call him Todd, but honestly, I've forgotten what his name is. Todd asked me to meet him at a vacant house he recently bought to give him an estimate for a full rewiring job. He was 30 minutes late, so I was already unimpressed with him. Upon entering the house, which was right after a rainstorm had passed through, we found an inch of water covering the hardwood floors. There was water pouring out of small holes in the column on the front porch. Everything was soaked. Instead of showing me around, Todd called his business partner and brother and spent the next 20 minutes going off on him for not fixing the roof. I'm standing around and listening to his man-baby rage on full display. The whole time I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going to work for this guy. His fuse was way too short and his anger was out of hand. I gave him a price, which admittedly was the "I don't want to do this job" price, and didn't hear back from him until months later. Todd called me later that year. He explained that he had found an electrician from 3 states away and had paid the electrician with ceramic tiles instead of cash. The problem now? Well, he needed an inspection from the city electrical inspector. I agreed to meet with the inspector for him, which I would bill him for. I went back to the house about 20 minutes before the inspector showed up and saw numerous issues. When the inspector arrived, we walked through together. Every issue I saw, the inspector also saw. He pointed them out, and every time I agreed with him that the work was not up to code. This inspector kept looking at me with a puzzled expression. After we did a complete walkthrough, I finally explained to the inspector that I didn't do any of the work and was hired to get him to pass the inspection. He asked me if I thought he should, and I told him absolutely not. I got paid for my time, I got paid to repair all the violations, and I formed a strong relationship with that inspector, who was always lenient with me on all of my future jobs. Am I the jerk for quitting my daughter's job for her? So I, 42 female, have a daughter who's 15 who got her first job as a hostess at a mom-and-pop restaurant. I was super proud of her and supported her in every way. We made sure she was there when needed, helped her fill out paperwork, all that stuff. First week, she says she's tracking her time on a post-it note. She doesn't have a login to track her hours in their system. We tell her to make sure those hours get counted somehow and offer to speak to her manager. She asks us not to get involved, so we don't. We ask her how much she was offered. She doesn't know. When does she get paid? She doesn't know. She's timid and afraid to speak up, being her first job. We give it time. During this time, she's working 4 to 7 hours per shift. In our U.S. state, there are child labor laws that specifically apply to 14 and 15-year-olds. These state that she cannot work more than 3 hours per shift, 18 hours per week, or outside the hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. while school is in session, which it is. She was regularly working outside of those hours, including one night until 11:30 p.m. One dinner shift, a customer yelled at her on the phone for not knowing the full menu. Okay, it happens. Said customer decided to come into the restaurant, ask for her, and went off on her in person, while her manager stood by and just did nothing. This infuriated me, and I wanted so badly to call her manager and tell him he should support his staff and have their back, but she asked me to stay out of it. We let it go, again at her request, until today. She worked today and texted me that she was miserable and wanted to quit. She said that she was not suited for this position and didn't want to continue. I told her she absolutely did not owe them anything other than finishing her shift, and we would be there when she got off work at 3 p.m. In the meantime, she put in her 2-week notice, which was generous for a job she's held for all of 3 weeks, but it was her choice. We get there at 3, and I go inside to let her know that we're there. Her co-hostess pipes up and says, "Actually, I get to decide when she leaves, and I'm not ready for her to leave." As you can imagine, this irritated me, as she was told she was off at 3 p.m. and I was ready to go home. I told her to go clock out and go outside, and I'd be out in a minute. I asked to speak to a manager. I spoke to a head server and told her I appreciated the opportunity they gave my daughter. I said this was not going to work out and today would be her last day. They have not made a schedule going forward, so I said not to schedule her anymore. I got the details on when and how much she would be paid and left. I never raised my voice or was mean. My daughter is furious with me. I explained to her that I tried to let her take the reins here, but she was not standing up for herself, and being 15, I was not going to allow anyone to take advantage of her. She made the decision to quit. I just pushed it along a bit faster. So Reddit, am I the jerk for negating her notice and making her quit? Edit. My goodness, I'm overwhelmed at all the responses. I've tried to read every single one and take everything in. Thank you to everyone who took the time to point out things I could have done better. I truly do want to learn from this and do the right thing next time, if there is a next time. I've apologized to my daughter for how I handled things. I explained what all they did wrong and told her I was very proud of her for wanting to give a notice, but I just couldn't sit back and watch them mistreat her for 2 more weeks. She argued that she made the choice to quit on her own terms, and I took away that chance by telling them she wouldn't be coming back. She's still very mad, and I told her she can be mad at me, and I'm sorry for any embarrassment I caused, but I do not regret removing her from that toxic environment. We've learned a lot from this experience, and we will make sure she knows what info to get before her first shift at the next job, which she's anxious to get, but will probably have to wait a couple weeks due to a planned vacation. I will update when we get her paycheck. I have a bad feeling they're going to try and get out of paying her for the first week when she didn't have a profile in the system. Not the jerk. I'll go against others who say you're undermining her. You're not. The situation she's in, they were mistreating her and it was detrimental to her. This is a situation where parents need to step in, as she was only going to let herself get further taken advantage of. Were it a one-off, I'd say otherwise, but they were breaking the law and allowing her to be mistreated. At a certain point, you have to step in if she won't. I would say to go even further and report the place to the Department of Labor. Those laws are there for a reason. I'm honestly baffled OP didn't already do that. 11:30 on a school night for a 15-year-old? What are they thinking? If anything, I'd vote you're the jerk because OP didn't intervene sooner. Like, yeah, let your kids fight their own battles and stuff for all I care. If they're cool with working a bit more, let them do so. I did like 12-hour shifts when I was 17 so I could earn cash more quickly during the summer. But I did so voluntarily, albeit still illegally. But that was outside of school for about 3 weeks with a certain goal in mind. I knew how much I'd get. I knew my hours were tracked correctly, and it was for a pretty big company, which makes it even more ridiculous that they let me do this. But I digress. OP's daughter got taken advantage of several times in just 3 weeks. Like, what on earth? Don't just let your timid daughter get played like that for no reason. Not the jerk. Gosh, I'm surprised by all these you're the jerk votes. The daughter is 15 and this is her first job. She's being exploited and the restaurant is breaking labor laws. The mother is doing exactly what a parent is supposed to do, protecting her kid when her kid is unable or unwilling to protect herself. And in this case, it's simply due to her being inexperienced in the workplace. Her daughter is embarrassed right now, but her mother just gave her a very valuable lesson in how to recognize when she's being used. Good for you, Mom. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk for the way they handled this or not? Please let us know.
I don't think you're a jerk at all. I think you did the right thing. At the same time, I do understand why the daughter's embarrassed, but eventually I think she'll really appreciate what you did for her.
Am I the jerk for bringing my husband over even though I was told not to? I'm 24 and my sister is 27. I'm married and we have 2 kids. My husband is also 24. My sister has told me before that it makes her feel insecure that I'm married and we have kids when she doesn't. Personally, I think my sister is way cooler than me. She's in school to be a dentist. She works very hard too. She works in luxury retail. She used to tell me all she ever wanted was a white Mercedes, and she bought herself a white Mercedes recently. I was so proud of her. Every penny I ever spend comes from my husband. Yeah, I have a nice car, not nearly as cool as hers, but I didn't buy it, my husband did. Same with everything else. My clothes, my house, everything is bought by him. She's a hard-working lady, and she gets to spoil herself. She doesn't have to ask a man to do it for her like I do. And I love my husband more than anything in this world, but I still really do look up to my sister. She has a new apartment with a backyard and invited me and my parents all over for a barbecue. I asked if I could bring the kids. She said yes, but not my husband. I asked why. She said it makes her feel insecure when we are in her presence. I asked why. She said I'm 3 years younger than her, and it makes her feel bad about herself because she doesn't have any kids and isn't married. Not to mention, she has a boyfriend, and he's friends with my husband. He has no problem with him at all. In fact, they were communicating about what we should bring. I told my sister I guess I'll go alone, because I don't want to deal with a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old all by myself. But she said she'll help with them, and that she wants me to bring them, just not my husband. I said I can only bring one then, and she said to bring both no matter what. So I brought my husband. Her boyfriend greeted him, and he didn't even know he wasn't supposed to be there. I sat next to him inside, and she had me walk over to her and asked if I could just move away from my own husband. I respectfully declined, and she went over and told him,
"Just so you know, you weren't invited here."
Now he feels bad, and he went home, and I followed him. My sister is only a block away from us. We didn't drive. He said he didn't know that they hated him, and he thinks it's all his fault. She said I knew it made her uncomfortable when I'm around him because she isn't married yet. She insisted I bring my 2 kids, but I'm only one person. I can't deal with them alone. Edit. Some people have the same concern I've had for 8 years now. I think my sister does have a crush on my husband, but I'm not 100% sure on that. The only evidence I have is sometimes I catch her staring at him. I'll say something silly like what you see? And she'll say,
"No, I just like his shirt."
And sometimes she'll look at him and say to me,
"I wish I had what you have."
But I always assumed she was talking about a family in general, not my husband specifically. Edit. Hey guys, I just want to say, a lot of you are totally right. I totally should have let my husband know, and I should have just told my sister straight up I'm either going with my husband or not at all. I didn't think of it like that. That being said, here's the real reason for this edit. I took your guys' advice. I called her, I apologized, and I straight up asked her, "Do you have a crush on my husband?" She stuttered a ton and then said,
"A little bit."
So I think that answers that. Should her boyfriend know? Should my husband know? I don't know what the right thing to do here is. How do I tell my husband my sister has a crush on him? Everyone sucks here. Your sister is absolutely the jerk for the way she treats your husband, full stop. You are also the jerk for not standing up for him and subjecting him to her mistreatment. Instead of telling her that you wouldn't go without him, so you'd be staying home, you brought him with you without even telling him what's going on. Your husband is not the jerk, he's an innocent pawn. Next time, just refuse her invitation unless your husband is welcome. If she can't accept you all as a family, she gets none of you. It is her house, she can invite who she wants, but you are not obligated to visit her. Her insecurity doesn't need to be your drama. Stop going over until she can act like an adult. Everyone sucks here. I'm calling BS on your sister's reasons. I think she's lying to you. She has a good job, is working towards a professional career, has her own place and a boyfriend. If she wanted to marry and have babies instead, why didn't she do that? It feels like there's something more at play here. Going out on a wild limb, but maybe she fancies your husband, envies your relationship with him, and can't stand to see you together because she's jealous. See, if her insecurities are based on you being married and the fact that you have kids, how come she's demanding that you bring them with you? How come she's demanding you don't sit next to your husband when her boyfriend is there? I wavered on calling you the jerk as well, but my reasons to go with it are partly because you ignored her stated wishes, her home, her rules, and partly because you exposed your husband to her snide comment. And honestly, I'm struggling with you not telling her, thanks for the invite, but no, I'm not interested in attending a family event without my husband. Am I the jerk for backing up my kids when they snapped at their cousin? I'm 38, female. My 16-year-old daughter, Allie, started her senior year, and my 15-year-old son, Josh, started his sophomore year. They've been enjoying school since their cousin, Chase, who's 14, started high school this year, and they've all got the same lunch period. They quickly started to hate going to school when their cousin, Gabe, who's 16, switched his lunch period to theirs. Gabe always smells like BO, says very offensive things loudly, and is very gross and annoying. This is what Allie told me. Gabe also got put into each one of my kids' classes, making class hard for both of them because both teachers are making my kids help him because he refuses to do his work. He'll also wait outside Chase's class to walk with him to lunch, and the kids aren't able to ditch him. They tell me this and send texts throughout the day. Gabe's parents weren't going on the traditional family camping trip. Gabe tried to go with my father-in-law and mother-in-law since Allie was going with them. My mother-in-law hates riding alone since they were taking separate vehicles and invited Allie to go with her a day early since she has good grades and can miss an extra day of school and recover fine. Gabe's grades are terrible, and if Gabe was even invited, they don't even have room for him to sleep in the trailer. He refused to understand why he couldn't go and kept saying that mother-in-law was playing favorites. My father-in-law went behind her back and invited his friend up and also had his friend bring Gabe. This started a few arguments between the kids because Gabe kept calling Allie a jerk for leaving early. During the trip, the kids came back from playing in the forest saying that Gabe wouldn't stop making fun of all of them. They decided to come play cards in my trailer because I told them beforehand Gabe wouldn't be allowed in here because he wasn't sleeping here. Gabe tried to come in, but I lied to him, saying that the kids were eating lunch and to leave them alone while they ate. The kids stayed in there for an hour, with Gabe coming and knocking on the door every 15 minutes. After about 9 knocks, Allie became furious, opened the door, and snapped, saying, "You're annoying and gross. Leave me and the boys alone. None of us even wanted you to come up this year. Go bother other people." Gabe looked at me and asked if I was going to say anything. I told him that Allie said the truth and that he needs to leave my trailer. He went and sulked at his tent. My sister-in-law sent me nasty text messages, and I'm starting to wonder, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. This kid is a bully, and it's probably because of bad parenting. It's not your job to manage him or the type of relationship he chooses to foster between himself and your kids. It's also important your kids learn to stand up for themselves. Could they have been a little bit nicer about it? Probably. But it sounds like this kid has been horrible to them for a while now, and an individual can only take so much BS before snapping. It's not their responsibility to drop their own boundaries to make him feel better about his bad behavior. He's just lucky it happened on a private family trip and not at school in front of his peers. A couple of things here. You shouldn't be allowing kids to bully or talk smack to each other like that, regardless if it's true. You should be talking to the parents about why their kid has BO. You should be talking to the parents about why their kid has BO. You should be talking to the parents about why their kid has BO. and is constantly annoying people. Even if you want Gabe to leave them alone, you simply tell him that kindly. Gabe, go find something to do. Allie and the boys are playing. If Chase is well-rounded and his older brother is a mess, then talk to the parents. As far as the school stuff, I'd be having a conference with the teachers that your kids claim are making them help Gabe. Just because they're related doesn't mean they have a responsibility to his schooling. I say talk to the teacher, because regardless of how well-mannered your kids may be, kids still exaggerate. But if the teacher does indeed say they are doing that, you put a stop to it. I'd actually insist all of the kids sit separately. Either way, get a handle on school and don't encourage kids to talk smack to each other. Find solutions that don't bully a 16-year-old.
Sometimes bullies need a taste of their own medicine.
Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for the way that they handled the situation or not? Please let us know.
OP didn't do anything wrong. Gabe needs to learn that once he gets out in the real world, nobody's gonna like him if he acts like that. And I really hope he decides to take a shower.
Am I the jerk for not telling my boyfriend about my promotion after he stole my previous one? Me and my boyfriend worked together at our part-time job. That's how we met. My boyfriend is very traditional, and he likes to be the one who makes all the money in the relationship, which I personally don't really mind. However, that doesn't mean I don't want to not try to be successful. When we both started, we both worked at the lowest position, making $11 an hour. Around maybe 7 months later, my manager asked me if I wanted to move up to a new position where I would be making $13 an hour, which of course I said yes to. My boyfriend was happy for me, but he seemed to be more concerned about asking our manager if he could move up too. I didn't really care then, since I knew my manager was looking for lots of people to fill those empty positions. A few months after that, a position opened up higher up, and my manager asked me if I would want to take that position. I would be making $16 an hour, and of course, I said I would love to. However, something personal happened, which I won't go into detail about, but basically, I just had to wait about a month until I could start in that new position. My manager said he could almost guarantee the position would still be mine, so I have nothing to worry about. I told my boyfriend about the news, and yet again, he was happy for me. A few days later, he said he asked our manager if he could move up too, which I guess our manager said yes to. He didn't tell me about this until the position was already his. What my boyfriend didn't know was that there was only one position open. I hate to word it this way, but basically, my boyfriend stole my promotion from me. After that, I had to wait around 9 months for another position to open up. It's been around 1.5 years since then. I don't really hold a grudge against my boyfriend though about it, because I like that we get to work together, especially in the same position. About a month ago, yet another position has opened up, which was offered to me, and of course I said yes. This time I didn't tell my boyfriend, not until my first day. He didn't seem angry, but definitely upset by it, because he probably knows he would definitely sound like a jerk if he wasn't happy for me about it. Now, every time I mention it, he just drops the topic and talks about something else. I do feel a little bad because I know he's hurt by it, but at the same time, I'm not the one in the wrong. I worked my way up to this, now making an annual salary rather than working by the hour. It's been around a month and he's still obviously upset by it. Am I the jerk? Definitely not the jerk. But do you really want a relationship where you have to be on pins and needles all the time, worrying that your boyfriend is going to take away your success to make him feel like more of a man? I make 2.5 times my husband's salary. You know what he thinks of that? Awesome. Not the jerk, but reconsider the child with the hurt ego. Not the jerk. You took a promotion. Not sure why you stayed with him after he sabotaged the last one, but that's your choice. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know.
Dudes who feel intimidated when their girlfriends make more money than they do. Not even once.
Am I the jerk for kicking out my sister-in-law? She left a fake pregnancy test in my room. I'm 33, and my husband, Adam, who's 36, came back from his month-long trip days ago. My in-laws live states away, and my sister-in-law, who's 20, was staying with me since she got kicked out of her dorm. Adam and I got back from the airport at 7 p.m., and my family came to visit. Adam went inside the bedroom and started unpacking while I was in the kitchen with my mother. I suddenly heard Adam shouting my name. He told me to come upstairs ASAP. He sounded very angry. I went to meet with him in the bedroom and I saw him holding a positive pregnancy test in his hand. I was dumbfounded. He began questioning me, saying he found it inside my sock drawer. He asked, "You gonna explain to me what the heck this is doing here?" I was speechless from my shock. As I understood what this might have looked like to him, I said I had no idea. It wasn't mine and I had never seen it before. He kept telling me to explain how it got there if I had never seen it and it wasn't mine. My family heard the commotion and tried to intervene, but Adam locked the door. I freaked out because I literally had no idea what was going on. Adam said he just wanted me to be honest. I said he had the right to be mad, but I knew nothing about it and had no explanation. He said mad doesn't even begin to cover it, then suddenly started putting everything back in his bags, saying he was going to stay with a friend until I call him up with an explanation. He unlocked the door and found my family waiting. His sister showed up, asking what was going on, then started laughing, asking, "So, was it really positive or not?" I was stunned as she proceeded to say she planted the pregnancy test in the drawer as a prank and that everyone should calm down. She was like, "Bruh, chill. Have you ever heard of fake pregnancy tests? They're pretty telling." I was livid. I screamed at her, asking how she thought this was funny and that it was okay to humiliate me in front of my family. She tried to justify it, saying it was her boyfriend's, who has ASPD by the way, idea to bring laughter to the atmosphere. But I told her she was no longer welcome at my home after what she did. Adam took a seat to calm down, watching us argue as my mom got involved, asking me to take it easy. I insisted that my sister-in-law pack and leave right then, and she started crying and apologizing, saying she had nowhere to go, begging Adam to do something, but he didn't. I called her an Uber and had her leave. Mother-in-law heard and started calling me, shaming me for kicking out her daughter like that. I told her what her daughter did, and she still said my reaction was over the top, as her daughter is being naive and as a kid acting recklessly. She said we're her family and I should consider taking her back, but I said I won't. Edit. I too was confused by Adam's reaction and have a feeling he was in on the prank too, based on how serious he was being. Mom thought the same thing, and I wouldn't be surprised since A, he remained quiet when I argued with his sister, and B, he always does pranks with her and sees nothing wrong with her behavior. He actually thinks she's funny. I don't know if I'll ever be sure about him taking part in her pranks. Edit. Adam and I struggle with infertility on his side because of his health issues, so that added to my anger since it seemed like his sister was being cruel and insensitive. Who do you agree with, OP or sister-in-law? Please let us know.
I'd call up those in-laws and tell them why don't they take her in.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video. Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.